Allison Schein is the Director of Archives and Rights Management for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and is the former Director of Media Archives for WTTW, WFMT, and the Studs Terkel Radio Archive in Chicago. She has collaborated with institutions such as the Library of Congress, the Chicago History Museum, the Chicago Public Library, and the Dominican University's School of Information Studies. She earned her archive certification in 2013 after completing her MLIS, and she holds a bachelor's degree in audio arts and acoustics from Columbia College in Chicago, which just goes to tell you, you can end up anywhere. Anywhere. Her past projects include processing the black and white photography archives of Johnson Publishing Company, reorganizing the library at the Arts Club of Chicago, and providing metadata support for Northwestern University Library's Digital Collections Department. She's also the 2014 recipient of the Young Mazzuchelli Model Award. I knew I was going to mess up.
It's two ML Italian names. Sorry.
Yes, yeah. All right, so everyone please help me in welcoming Allison Schein to the Georgia Archives.
Thank you, Robin. That was a really wonderful introduction, and I'm so happy to be here. As you could kind of tell, I'm a recent transplant. I will actually celebrate my 1 year on the job next week, and just celebrated my 1 year in Atlanta a couple of days ago. So this is a wonderful way to cap off this week. So thank you for joining us here. Thanks. I had some time visiting here. My mom lives here, and my sister lives here, so I'm not wholly unfamiliar, but you have great weather. I love the heat, and you have a music scene, which I also love. Could use a little more jazz, though. But that's just showing my bias. What I'd like to talk to you a little bit today, as we've talked about, is the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and its evolution. So we'll kind of go over some of the last 150 years of what was the Constitution and the Atlanta Journal. And then we will wind up in our new modern news organization, and I'll show you some of the reporting and fun things that we've done here. And then I'll go through some options and ways you can access the historical and recent archives of the AJC through your local library. If you have any questions, feel free to jump out, raise your hand, shout them out, whatever. I will try to answer them as best as you can. I will say, as much as I've been trying to delve into the historical content of the AJC of both papers, I am also steeped in copyright and policymaking at the AJC. As part of my job is rights management, and we don't want to get sued for using third-party content. We want to make sure that we're using it legally, with licenses and with permissions, and retraining a newsroom who hadn't had anyone in that position for quite a long time takes a bit of effort. So if I can't answer your questions right away, I apologize, but hopefully we can learn together. So let's start and look. These are some of our most famous front pages over the last 150 years, and I hope everyone is able to see this. If not, please feel free to move up, or if I need to read something out, just holler and I will read it. I have my glasses, so I would at least be able to help you that way. So we've got our first home, right, which is what you saw here. And, for a long time, we were the paper of record, right, for Atlanta, for the metro Atlanta, and then the South. We are now trying to focus more on what it means, what news means for Georgians and how it relates to Georgia, outside of Georgia, the whole state of Georgia, and then the South as well. But our focus is on Atlanteans and Georgians, right? So we have now boroughs in Athens and Macon and Savannah, which was an expansion from before, in the hopes that we are covering for everyone, and not just some select few that might have been subscribers. So we are now trying to expand that so everyone is inclusive, right? So June 18th, 1868, that's when the first edition of the Constitution was printed and released. However, we don't have a copy of that. But we do have one from 3 days later, which is really nice. And as we scroll through here, you'll see the differences of our papers and what we were able to do. I had thought about bringing some artifacts here, but I got a little nervous. because of the lunch aspect. But maybe if we do a repeat session of some sorts, I can bring some artifacts for everyone to look at. For instance, we've got some stuff from our 75th anniversary of the Golden Jubilee that was really great. And for those lifetime Georgians who are here, might be able to help me provide more context of some of the imagery that are around, because as a recent implant, I just don't understand or know the history quite yet. And I'm always looking to tap the knowledge of folks who've been here longer than I have, and have maybe been exposed to the news longer than I have, especially in Georgia. And so you'll see we've got the International Expo open here, and so we obviously covered that. And you see here we've got the Titanic mentioning too, which was obviously very tragic. Interestingly enough, the sinking of the Titanic coincided with the gentleman whose archive I built in Chicago, Studs Terkel, because he always said the Titanic went down and he came up because he was born at the same time. Thought that was a little weird, but hey, he was a big guy, so I wasn't going to argue with him. And then we move into the Leo Frank lynching. So which is what I have found interesting about working in news is the way in which we are still talking about the same things, right? Because they just had the play at the Fox, right? Variety somewhere else, right? At the Fox talking about this as well. When I have folks come into the AJC, I've got an issue from 1963 that was just after JFK's assassination, talking about we are trying to get files and then make them public. They're talking about vaccines, they're talking about budgets, and they're talking about Georgia Tech. Are we talking about those things today? Right? And what I like to point out is that the evolution of our language, though, has changed while we are kind of reporting on the same things. The way in which we talk about them, the language that we used in the 60s is not the language that we will necessarily use today, except maybe as it relates to sports, as I'm learning, because apparently y'all are a big sports town, right? And then the Great Fire of Atlanta. Silly me, thought Chicago was the only place that had a great fire. Was I wrong? So here we covered it fairly extensively as well. And then we also have Gone with the Wind. Now we have had some funky stories floating around the newsroom about the reasons why different papers were purchased or different places were moved, all to get into the premiere of Gone with the Wind. They're unsubstantiated as far as I know, but it's still interesting to hear, like behind the scenes, the rumors of who, what, when, where, and what they were trying to do to be able to be a part of this, huge event where Hollywood was brought here. Am I talking too fast? No? Okay, good. Thank you. All right. And then we have a president who passed away in Warm Springs and in 1945. And you can see here, we've got, our typical different types of reporting. We've got our images of his hearse coming, well, you don't see the hearse, the train coming into Atlanta on its way to DC to deliver his body. And as we go along, and then a hotel fire death, right? Where you can see here, I think we've got McGill talking about how he just jumped and arrived at the hotel, and the dead are all packed up by now at 4:40. Those who leaped in the alley and streetcar are carried away, dead or wounded. Only the bloodstains on the big round catchnets testify what violence their dead weight plunged toward that dimly seen refuge. That is some dense reporting right there. Like, that is a very loaded and stacked sentence. I don't know that we would necessarily describe the destruction and the death that happens, unfortunately, now when there is an occurrence as such, that we would be a little less death and destruction, to be a little bit more compassionate and empathetic, at least we hope, right? This is a great way for me to also to learn the history of Atlanta. This I thought was actually very surprising, that the Braves stadium was built for the Braves. Then they were like, no, we're going to pause for a second. And then the NFL rolls up and then you get a baseball franchise. I wasn't aware that, I mean, I guess politics of business deals are what they are. But I thought that that was very interesting, that you finally had football down here, which I'm sure you all love. It ruins my birthday all the time, so I'm not a fan of football because I have the worst luck of being born, my birthday being the first weekend of February, which is typically Super Bowl weekend. And then, yep, we've got Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination and how we have reported that, and then the way in which we tell that story and how we tell it, and then also the imagery that goes around with it. Yes.
The date's wrong there. It should be August 4th, April 4th, rather. He didn't die on the 5th. He died on.
Oh, right. It says the murder of, let's say it happened on the evening of April 4th. So what it's saying is, yes, you are correct. We weren't able to have a reporter at the scene. So we are saying that we had to report it on the 5th. But great. Thank you. That was like, ooh, you've got a great copy edit eye. And an ear for history. So that's why the data is reflected incorrectly, is because we weren't able to get it. We had printing presses here. We don't have it. We had even combined forces with a couple of other newspapers to create our own paper to reduce costs. We don't do that anymore, but we had done that for quite a long time. And then we've got the first African-American mayor, Maynard Jackson Jr., right? And how we reported on that, right? And the imagery involved. We were still doing black and white photos, not a lot of color photos. I do have an interesting pamphlet at my office that does describe the color photo process in 1955, which I'd love showing kids, because I'm always like, pull out your phones. Oh, you have cameras? Oh, are they color? You know, look what we had to do to make them color in the 1950s in order for them to be in print. I do have this one book that is all of the journal newspapers from 1954. And while color wasn't prevalent, we do have quite a bit of color in our ads. And it's still vibrant to this day, the reds and the blues and even the yellows, which really fascinate me and speaks to like the process that we had at the time. Woo! And then we've got Hank Aaron, who we all hopefully all know and love, and breaking Babe Ruth's his signal seat. Thank you. I'm like, I'm reading it, but I can't get the words out. His home run. Yes. So, why? Anyway, and that was huge for us, right? Like it was huge. When I say for us, I don't mean the AJC. I mean huge for baseball, right? And huge for, especially for Georgia. So that was really a wonderful moment. And it's a photo that adorns our offices as well, which is really great. And that's just a great celebratory moment. And then we have, not gonna cry, President Carter, who we know started as a peanut farmer, right? I don't need to explain to you all who he was, how he changed everything, how we were very sad to see him go, and how we still try to continue to bring him into the conversation when we can, when we are reporting about different procedures and policies that are happening today. And then we've got some very fun and very uplifting headlines coming up now. Unfortunately, we have the Tacoma Falls tragedy, which again, are we still talking about climate change and river problems, right? And what happens when we are not prepared or equipped to be able to handle what Mother Nature decides to throw at us, and how unfortunate and sad it is. Yes. And you can't even at 1:30, like there was no alarms to sound, right? No, like there was just no one, right? It just kind of came down and rolled it out, and it was very unfortunate. Then we have the Atlanta child murders, which obviously wreaked havoc on the city and how and the safety and how it felt to be able to walk down the street, especially not knowing if you were going to be targeted or not. I mean, that's scary, but we had to make sure people knew about it and what happened, and then they were able to find it. Interestingly enough, I just watched something on TV that seemed to misquote that the Atlanta murders had never, like, the murder had never been found, but but we do see that the contradictory of who was able to link how many murders were able to be linked to one person and the ways in which they were building cases. I was like, you need some different fact checkers, people. And then the Olympics. Oh, we missed the Olympics. There it is. Sorry, I did not mean to scroll past it. Which was a joyous time for the most part, except when it didn't happen, except when it got a little funky, right? And we had quite a bit of news, and we also had some intrepid reporters that were really on the hunt for what happened. And one of our reporters was even recreating the guy's steps from hotels to Centennial Park. He has gone through detailed, just like walking, like literally retracing the steps that he took to try and figure out and how to break the story ahead of maybe folks that were out of town news reporters that didn't have the advantage of being on the ground. How did everyone feel when the Olympics were here?
We all took off work and went downtown.
How did you get downtown? In which ways?
We walked downtown. We went to the streets where it was happening.
Anyone else? You drove?
But just to the tennis, then it went to the basketball. So I didn't want, I really wanted the basketball, but I couldn't really get into the last minute.
Yeah.
But I went to tennis because I could get in.
Oh, sure.
And wrestling. I like wrestling.
Interesting. Yeah.
I worked at Georgia Tech at the time, so we was on campus.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah.
I worked through like
You
baseball
did?
and dance.
Amazing. That's wonderful. Yeah.
I worked at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution at that time, and we were pretty much fussed in
Oh, really?
different things. So we wrote about different,
Yeah. I'm embarking on an oral history program. You know, I can correct me for anything I say wrong. I'm just saying, it's okay. I will not be upset.
Yeah.
I freely admit I am still learning, and it is okay. I will not, I have a very thick skin, but also if I'm wrong, I don't want to,
I lived in Panama City, Florida at the time, and it was the busiest 2 weeks the resorts ever had. Because whoever could afford to leave town did.
So you got everybody.
All the hotels on the
Oh,
Gold
sure,
Coast.
sure. And there was no Airbnb then, so
No.
they left.
But
And they
people rented
they
their
did.
houses. People
Okay.
rented their cities, park, a place like that.
Yeah.
Were rented out to
Yeah.
people.
Great, last one in the back.
I was living in Valdosta at the time, and I was unable to arrange to get tickets, but my parents volunteered and they were assigned to the soccer stadium over in Athens. This was in the day and the age of the soccer hooligans, so I was really scared for my parents from hooligans, not from any terrorists.
Sure, sure. And they were okay. They made it back.
There was no incidents. The hooligans are not going to travel all the way from Europe to come here.
Well, we'll see if that holds true next year, right?
I think that's kind of.
Great. And then you've got some world championships, even though the baseball World Series isn't part of the world. Oh, sorry, semantics. And then that's great, right? Because who doesn't want a World Series title? I'm a Cubs fan. It took us significantly longer than your Braves to get a World Series title. So, but how exciting was that for anyone go to the parade, right? Hopefully someone went to the parade. And then we've got and this just, right in March, it was the anniversary of the courthouse killings with Brian Nichols. Never fun, never great, but we do have some interesting imagery from there. that some that made it into the paper, some that is still in our archives. And then your snowpocalypse. Now, is this the snowpocalypse for real, or is this the apocalypse? This was when you actually got snow, right? Snowmageddon was more Ice-mageddon, right? But this was fairly traumatic, I would imagine. I should have maybe had a disclaimer that some of these headlines might be a little triggery, and I apologize for that. And I do understand, yeah.
What year was that? Because there's a bunch of probably.
2014. Yeah, was there not a blizzard in 93?
Yes.
The blizzard or this 2014 one? The blizzard, and this was, the 2014 was snow and ice?
Yeah.
I tell you, there was my neighbor, and his parking lot has a little bit of a hill, and I had ice because I've got dogs, so I didn't want, they're elderly dogs, and I didn't want them sliding off the deck. And I gave it to him, and he poured the entire container on this small hill, and I was like, you didn't need to, you're okay. He was like, I'm so scared, I'm so nervous. I was like, you could have just put glitter in the back of your car and then slowly, and he was just like, I'm gonna die. I felt so bad, so bad. But I haven't did any of my Chicago winter wear, so at least I was prepared. Maybe get some windproof winter jackets for the, 5 times no. I saw that. I did see that walking around. I'm like, well, you're just throwing it on, and everyone's wearing their canvas shoes. It's gonna be cold. Okay, and then the APS cheating scandal, right? Which, we see reporting that does, we're thankful that some of our reporting does enact actual change, right? And so this led to some really great change, and which hope was for the better, right? And interestingly enough, that it didn't, like they wanted to sweep it under the rug. It wasn't going to happen. It wasn't true. And then with our dog reporting, we were able to prove that it in fact was true. And then, so this is our former editor who go into a lot of how he came and what it had meant. But I wanted to kind of show you some of our new reporting and what it looks like, right? And so this is our site, and we are able to, again, we're showcasing what our reporting is for Atlantans and Georgians, and then the South, right? More so you don't see a lot of international or national headlines in here. You'll see stories that tie it back to what it matters to folks that live here, right? And I don't know what time, because I don't have a watch. Okay. And something that's different from the past is our investment into audio and video. So we do have a couple of podcasts, as you may or may not know, Breakdown, and we have Dog Nation. We've got others coming out that I can't talk about, but hopefully you will check them out and be interested in them. But we're also stepping up our video game. So we have stood up an entire video team who is trying to create a visual identity and bring stories to you, because most of us have phones in our pockets now that we mostly make it consume our news from. I don't always do that, but sometimes folks do. And so what I wanted to show you is this video. I'm not sure if anyone has seen it. I'm going to, and if it's too loud, shoot your hand up and I will make it lower. No. How about I just turn it on? Maybe if I turn the video on?
Yeah.
It's a good idea.
Might finally have a national park. So naturally, I came to Macon to visit the famous 𝘑𝘰𝘶 Mounds National Historical Park for the first time since an awe-inspiring field trip in 2nd grade to marvel at the mounds. You may have heard of 𝘑𝘰𝘶 in recent weeks after it landed a coveted spot on Time Magazine's World's Greatest Places of 2025 list. But unlike some other relatively new attractions on the list, this site has over 17,000 years of continuous human habitation and is home to the largest archaeological excavation in American history. While this has been a National Historical Park for the past 6 years, a new bill proposes that the park footprint would cover up to 20,000 acres and receive a new designation as a national park. The bill, which Congress is expected to vote on this year, would also allow for the Muskogee Creek Nation, whose people were forcibly removed from their ancestral lands in the 1830s, to co-manage the park.
What we are seeking in this park, in the current legislation, is that the Muskogee Creek Nation can come back and have a larger voice in this, to talk about land management, species management, to bring our resources into the park, to help with the storytelling, to elevate what's really here. We are the first removed tribe to come back and seek this bigger level in management for our park.
After entering the park for free, you can walk through the reconstructed Earth Lodge or check out 2,000 artifacts here in the Visitor Center.
People don't want anyone to go dig up their family. We don't want anyone to dig up our family and our artifacts either. And so bringing the tribe back into this really helps us put the culture back in it, put the stories back in, and creates a healing in the land.
So we've got videos that kind of cover a lot of different aspects, right? There's one on loneliness. Actually, Fraser, when Hurricane Helene hit, he was not unable to reach his mom in Asheville. So he did a video documentary about what it meant to travel with supplies in order to reach his mom and then find her and then bring her over here meaning back to Atlanta while the recovery was happening. So it's a lot of fun, different stuff. Some of them are fun, some of them are less fun. But this is a way in which we are trying to make news a little bit more engaging and also showcasing what Georgia has to offer, even on a national scale. So while this may be exciting and fun for us too, but it's also showcasing, oh, hey, this is where you want to come and hang out and maybe check around. The last thing that I really want to talk about is how our current reporting is really helping out. Let me go up here, sorry. Again, impacting change yes. Oh, sorry, I thought you were needing to. So I don't know if any of you were familiar with what was going on with the 𝘠𝘰𝘶𝘳𝘯𝘊𝘰𝘯𝘴 swamp and the tuggle and toss between it because someone wanted to develop it and folks wanted it to be preserved. And Drew Kahn had been following the story and really highlighting it and doing some hard-hitting reporting about it and why maybe it should remain a reserve. And it's because of that it brought it to a larger attention. And so we had an inside scoop that we were able to, there was a cross-functional deal and that it was purchased by a land conservation company. By 3 of them, I think, as a consortium type deal. So it will remain a preserved swamp and not something that will be developed. And it's a story that we had stayed on for at least 2 years. I know at least a year because it had been going on right before I had just started. It was a big story that we were really trying to stay on and stay really focused on as a way to make sure that it was preserved, because Drew's an environmental reporter and that was very important to him, also very important to the state. And now we can safely say that it is being preserved. So yeah, that's kind of my half-hour spiel. We can talk about other things. I'm a big conversation person. So if anyone has any questions or anything I can look up.
When did the two companies merge? The Journal and the Constitution?
What?
They bought or merged or?
Yeah, so the Constitution and
Constitution, the Journal.
yeah, I know the Journal stopped printing in 2000, the afternoon in 2001 on November 3. So that was when they were combined as the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. The Constitution started in 1868. And the Journal started, I believe, not too long after. I believe Cox bought them in the early 50s, and then they shared newsrooms and resources, but they were still kind of competitors. And then slowly they were merging on the Sunday edition, and then they merged on the Saturday edition. And then in 2001, they really kind of came together. as the AJC. So I've got the plates from the final journal afternoon edition that from November 2nd, and it used to say covers Dixie Like the Dew, and they changed it to say covered. So we have those. Anyone else? Are any other stories that have ever touched you, or anything that maybe has been in the news that you had maybe seen coverage of? And does anything come to mind? Some things that unfortunately aren't covered in here because it was the 150 retrospective, but for instance, like John Lewis's funeral, right? And the images and the reporting associated with that, Carter's funeral and the associated images of that. And so that is something that I have to create, 150 up to that point, and then, up to this point as well. Yeah.
So the Petrie Road race for I don't know how many years.
75.
75.
1975, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about your photograph collection. I mean, you do on your website, you have a from the wall kind of.
Yes.
Is there a part on your website where you can go and just scan through photographs?
There is not on our website, however. I know I've got horrible typing skills, so I'm sorry for that. So we don't have them. However, our historical images are at Georgia State University, and you can browse them there for free. And they have, I would say, a sizable amount of our images up there for you to browse, to be able to look at.
Are there AJC photos?
Yeah.
Not at all.
None that I think that we have that have survived. Now, if they are from, if there are images that we have that are prior to 1930, then yes, if they survived. If they haven't survived, that is why I say no, only because we may not have copies of them. So theoretically, yes. But as someone who can't just walk into the next cold storage room to go play in the negatives or the our images, I can't say, right? But so physically maybe, but if they were printed before, or if they were taken before 1930, then yes. But I don't know that we have them.
So I'm actually a professional media archivist. Been an archivist now for a long time.
Great.
30 years.
Great, love it.
Worked at this building when it was built.
Great.
I most recently worked with a historic newsreel collection,
Oh,
1997 to 1950.
is that the Sherman group?
Sherman Group?
Sherman group, yeah.
Yeah, so
I do know them. Yeah.
yes, I was one of the lead archivists
Oh,
for that
right.
project
Yeah.
that he did.
Yeah.
The question I've been focused on lately, I'm writing on, I just wrote for publication about how to negotiate rights and usage before you accept the collection.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So the question that I have that might be of interest to the public is about content authenticity,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is a big thing right now, right? We talk about this thing that we call fake news as if it's a new thing.
Right.
But yet, when I was working with the Paramount and Historic Cafe collection, this imagery that you see in there that you're like, no, that's not right. There's something wrong, right? And so the question becomes one of the evolution of newspaper reporting
Mm-hmm.
and how do we now authenticate or make sure that information that we're going to publish is more accurate than what our predecessors would have done,
Sure.
and in some ways, I guess, continue to do, unfortunately,
Right, right.
And so I'm wondering if you could talk about a little bit of the history of reporting and how things have changed so that when a prestigious newspaper publishes something,
Sure.
it's fact-found
Right.
and
So I can only speak to some of that, right? Because did you want to add? No, or later? Okay. So I can only speak to some of that, right? Because literally it'll be next week that I've been in a newsroom for a year. So I can't necessarily speak to the history of reporting. If you've got any thoughts on this, you're more than welcome to jump in. But I will say that there are tools now to authenticate video and audio that are available. They're a little pricey, but they are available, and media literacy is 110% very important, right? And at least within our newsroom now, and it may have been the same here, they instituted a standards and practices department at the AJC. So now we have, I don't know what years were there, but Sean is no longer with us. She had retired. If you had worked with Sean McIntosh.
23 years from 94 to 2017, so.
Okay, so you had some overlap with Sean.
At some point, they would make us, and I was a reporter, they would have you at some point, which I think is a good idea, is to have people just sort of list their sources for the information at the start of the story, because people were having problems with this whole fake news issue. And so people could go back and say, well, here's where this person, I got it from the Fulton County Commissioner.
Right.
And I thought that was pretty good, might have grumbled about it because it takes time, but it gives, some more authenticity and helps people hopefully have more understanding of how the repertorial process worked. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And so now what happens is we've got a head of standards and practices who we have laid out. We do training, so many trainings on what that means of allegations of wrongdoing or anonymous sourcing or how to credit properly. Don't swipe things from the internet that you think is okay to use. You don't have a fair use argument to use it or permission to use these things. So I will say, at least in our newsroom, we have taken it very seriously in the last couple of years and codified what that means so that we are transparent. We are transparent with our newsroom, and we're transparent with our subscribers as to where our sources are coming from, why we've made certain decisions, and the fact checking that has happened. And we've even added an additional layer of like QC copy editing, right? So we are making sure to the best of our ability, that our reporting is accurate and true, and then we own up to it when it's not. Interestingly enough, we had a correction last week that wasn't our error. It was the Secretary of State's error, like in something that they put out. So it was really weird that we had to make a correction, not because of our reporting, but because the source was incorrect. So, but as we go through it, we do have our things go through a rigorous process, right? To make sure that we are putting out truthful, honest, and well-sourced materials. And try to stick away from the clickbait. I've got her in the back, then you, then you.
Bitch, talking about correction, I'm sorry, but the Atlanta Journal-Constitution Peachtree Roadways was a 10K event in Atlanta that started July the 4th, 1970. So that's about 55 years. And it had 150 runners gathered for the old Sears parking lot in the corner of Peachtree. And with 110 of them finishing the 6.2-mile course in Central City Park. And today it's the world's largest 10K running event with 60,000 participants.
So we started sponsoring it in 70, not in 75.
It sounded like you said 75 years.
Oh, I'm sorry. No. I did not meant to say 75 years. I apologize. I thought that we started sponsoring it in 1975.
Yeah.
I was off by 5 years. Great, thank you.
Well, that was the first race, and it was says AJC Peachtree Road.
Okay, then I was off by 5 years. Not that I had, sorry, I thought didn't we first start sponsoring it when I said 1975. I apologize. Thank you for letting me know. Appreciate it. Yeah, no, good. Yes.
I'm about to date myself, my age.
All good. I can date myself right now if you want.
The Atlanta Constitution was the morning paper.
Right.
And the Atlanta Journal was the evening paper.
Right. Yep.
And you saw reporters out in the street with cameras and getting the news on the spot.
Yeah.
And then they rushed back and write up that report, and it come out as the fact.
Yeah, yeah,
So you know where your facts came from.
right, because you could see it, right? Now and not so much, right? Because there's things that are just, there's news everywhere now, right? It's not in just certain, maybe smaller locations, because we're vast, right? We're a much larger operation as a populace.
And it just lets you know sometimes progress is not always good.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, not so good progress.
True, yes.
Ask you regarding chat GPT chat.
AI, generative AI.
Yeah, how that really because like I said, I remember those days because I was part of those days. But how that's impacting you as an archivist, and you said something about the rights thing in terms of whether something's authentic and how to go about that. Archivist job very, very difficult because you can go in there. Some people from I worked someplace else not too long ago say, "Oh yeah, I use Chat GPT," and I was just horrified this person would say that because that's just not how I was.
Right, exactly.
I mean, same, right? So we are not allowed to use, our newsroom is not allowed to use any generative AI in any reporting whatsoever. That is a blanket policy that is enforced top down. That is just not happening. The only times that we have done it or used it is for illustrative purposes. I can think of 2 times that was strictly in video. One was when we were reporting on the National Football Hall of Fame, and there's an exhibit where you can go in and have your body scanned, and then they will make you into a football player of your choice. Yeah, so but what we made sure to do is on screen as that is happening, it clearly states this is generative AI and the program that was made to use it. And another time, it was also talking about the use of Gen AI and how it's affecting everything and the depth of it. Oh, I should have played that video. That was a really great one. Next time. But again, it was on screen credit. This is the AI that was, used for it. And that is it. Like, it is only for illustrative purposes that relates to that subject. However, we are exploring the aspect of, like, what if our graphics person creates something and then uses an Adobe AI Firefly, to enhance it. Only in graphics, not in reporting. I just want to make that clear. It's for visual, not for words, not for reporting. Again, it is credited. Like, we are very transparent. We are very open about when and if that's used. And it had, to my knowledge, right now, it's only been used twice, just for those videos. So as we move forward, we are working through those, those minor exceptions will be in graphics when it's just like, how are we going to create this burst of whatever? I'm clearly not a graphics person. But so it's the disclosure and that's the transparency with the audience, right? But that is the only case in which we'll do it. Now, there are tools out there that like Medix has put out a tool, a forensic tool that can, you can run a video through it and it will demonstrate to you how and why, or if it's been manipulated so you can authenticate it. What would be great if those tools were a little bit more democratized, which I think will happen in a couple of years because of the cost, right? Yeah, now, and if there's only 1 or 2, it would be great if there were more and to help. I mean, we've got some high school kids, I'm sure, that could crack that code and make it happen. You know what I mean? But it is challenging, but it also shows why archives and archivists and librarians also are very important because we are the original fact checkers, right? And it's something that's taken seriously, and digital archivists are, that is more their wheelhouse, right? Because then they can find scripts or they can create scripts within the computing community to kind of do very basic, authentication for that. And, we all want newsrooms to be able to be authentic and not put out fake news, but this is the age in which we live in, unfortunately. I think the woman behind you had a question and I'll come back to you. Yeah.
I always wondered, because like when she was saying about the news, it was news reporting first before TV came about. So how did they correspond with each other? Because sometimes the newspaper would have an article and the TV, WSB, would have the same thing, but it would show more because like they had the reporters out there. How did they collaborate with each other?
You could probably speak more to that than I can because I see it from a rights perspective, so it comes differently.
When I was there, WSB was owned by Cox.
At the time,
Right.
for a while, no longer.
So some of that. I used to drive and I could hear my stories being read on.
Your words. Somebody else
Yeah.
felt.
I don't know so much as there's a collaboration because it's supposed to be competing.
Right.
So, but a lot of the footwork was, done by newspaper.
Right.
And, because and that's nothing against the TV because they've got 30 seconds where we have
Right.
now endless.
Right.
So, and so some of that, there's a crossover in between, they may see something and we're going to expand on that or something like that. But there's the collaboration it was not, it's not even when WSB and AJC were on together, they were still
A bit competitive.
Right.
But there was I feel, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel in the news world, there is this notion of courtesy, right, and reciprocity. So it's like, okay, I'll let you use you can use this and I'm not going to charge you. But when our reporters come back, if we're going to embed something or if there's a clip that we'd like to use, we would expect the same reciprocity to do that.
Say, for example, if I were to use as reported by WSB, you have to give that credit because, or according to the AJC and their reporting. So you give that, like you said, the reciprocity on giving the credit.
So it becomes a little bit more of relationship building,
Right.
a little bit then more competitiveness because, at the end of the day, we all want to do this for the greater good, right? We're all getting the stories out, hopefully for the greater good. And we want to be able to have that kind of exchange of materials of partial, excerpts.
Just to add on to that, we were out on the same scene, say it's a crime story or something. These are not reporters that are like looking to fight each other now. I may tell somebody, hey, I saw this over here. So there is that off the screen and off the news, but we want to help people. Right. So, but at the end of the day, everybody always wants to be first.
Right.
Everybody want to be first. Everybody want to be first.
Both years, it becomes kind of like the gel, if you will, to answer the question. When we're looking at reporting, we have to remember that the reporting is the telling of what's going on in society in which that newspaper or that reporting is being done. Because of that, there seems to be a relationship between the understanding of what the community wants to hear, how they're going to hear it, and what we start to see is that cross-pollination. So, if I go back in time into the history of newspaper or history of old newsreels like I've worked with, it's interesting when you start to look at the catalog records because you see derogatory terms, you see misdirection of information.
Right.
We look at any news media, it'd be a fascinating study to look at how, now we open up more to community. Hopefully the ethics of people have gotten better. There's still a lot of challenges. We see that every day. But it's that connection to the community that I think creates that cross-pollination.
I totally agree. And I will say,
Social media has everybody now considers themselves reporters. And more people there, whether we like it or not, more people according to studies have found that more people, the average person is getting their news, first understanding of a piece of news, breaking news from social media, which is
that's right. So true.
And so to that point, I will let you know that I would say there was a shift in the archival landscape where in 2019, 2020, we really looked at ourselves and our descriptive practices. And there has been a large repatriation movement of correcting that language, acknowledging that it was harmful and it was there and it was through the lens of someone who was not a part of the community. And there has been large strides to correct that and to make sure that it's not, which is why I point to the evolution of language. So that's on our end, right? And so what we're also trying to do is inform folks that are using our materials to continue on that evolution of language to make sure that it is not through our lens, and I mean, because they were mostly Caucasian men, right? And so then to remove that and to have it more adequately representative of the community that it's trying to describe or the materials that it's about. So there is a very, very strong movement that's happening to do that. Yeah, yeah.
You see that in all.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Are they removing?
No. What they're doing is they will leave notes and say that this is like deprecated, right? This is not what we say. This is not the terms in which, there's usually disclaimers that say, this is how, we are looking at it now, and this is what we are describing things now as, no longer that, unless it's horribly offensive, then they will just say, yeah.
We can't fix all of that.
Right.
Human.
Right. Because we're just observers.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Into.
I have one last one before we leave for the day. Can we all take a selfie together?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna post this online. I may post it in the Slack channel showing, hey, look who showed up.
See it in the newspaper.
If you're.
Are we supposed to wait?
Thank you. Any final questions before we leave? Yes, sir.
The history that's contained in the newspaper is valuable, especially to researchers. My question is about, though, the business model. I know you may not get specific with the numbers, but what percentage of income does the AJC get from, say, newspapers.com and from the archival, selling those archival services? Is that a big part of keeping the paper? Because I know it's a tough business environment to sell papers.
It is. It's funny because it's been in my brain. I've been in those contracts a lot. It is okay sustainably. We aren't doing terrible. It does a lot. It's not going to pay for my new dam, unfortunately. But we have enough users and there's enough interaction that it's still like the investment was worth it. Right. So I know that's I don't handle the numbers aspect of it. That's the finance department. I only deal with yes, we can do that. Yes, they can have that. Oh, should we be giving them exclusivity? But for the numbers aspect of it, that I can't say, but I know that we continue to renew the agreements. So we wouldn't be renewing them if they weren't financially feasible and something that was contributing to our growth. I know that's not really an answer, but
I know you can get too specific. I was just wondering, is it a substantial portion of the income of the AJC, or is it just a very tiny sliver?
I would say it's in between that. Oh, great. Thank you. If anyone has any other questions, I'll hang around a little bit, but I really appreciate your engagement and coming, and thank you for dealing with my misstep.